Number 1. Reduced verbal fluency. Research has shown that the less you talk to people, your measurable intelligence plummets. This is by extension due to a decline in verbal fluency and the inability to articulate issues. Your brain treats language like a muscle. When you don't use it often, it gets weaker. Your vocabulary shrinks through a process called lexical attrition. The words you once pronounced fluently start taking extra processing time, and your overall communication becomes less precise and nuanced. This is especially noticeable with abstract concepts and emotional vocabulary. People in isolation often report that they have thoughts and feelings they can't fully articulate, like being unable to explain an idea you understand internally due to lack of proper words to use. This is partly because the brain's pathways to emotional and conceptual vocabulary become rusty without regular use. You start noticing it in small but telling ways, like pausing mid-sentence because you can't recall the word microwave while pointing at it. You feel mentally exhausted when the waiter keeps asking you to clarify your order, but you can't say the word. Normal conversation requires split-second word retrieval from a vocabulary of tens of thousands of words, real-time grammar processing, meaning construction, and social context filtering. All this happening in milliseconds. But when you're not having regular conversations, your brain stops getting those rapid-fire language workouts, and the neural circuits that support quick thinking, witty responses, and nuanced vocabulary weaken over time. This is why people living alone often feel rusty in conversations and out of touch with normal social contexts. Number 2. Self-Audit Blackout. Scientists have found that loneliness significantly reduces your brain's ability to catch its own mistakes. When you live in solitude, your metacognition, basically your brain's internal error checking system, becomes less aware of when you're thinking incorrectly or making faulty judgments. Your metacognitive is the same system responsible for monitoring your understanding. When functioning properly, it's the voice that says, "Wait, let me double check that." Think of it like having a spell checker that only works half the time. Your brain is constantly supposed to be monitoring itself through multiple layers of self-awareness. There's the immediate monitoring that catches obvious errors, the intermediate monitoring that questions your assumptions, and the deeper monitoring that evaluates whether your overall approach to a problem makes sense. Social isolation systematically degrades each of these layers. This happens because social interaction that constantly forces your brain to calibrate your thoughts before letting them out. When you explain ideas to others or defend your reasoning, you're essentially calculating your mental accuracy. Without that external validation and correction, your internal monitoring system gets lazy. The concerning part is that you don't feel yourself getting less accurate. It starts as a simple forgetful behavior where you confidently write a date wrong on a form without noticing, or pour cereal before realizing you forgot to add the milk, which later spirals to metacognitive illusion, where you feel just as smart as normal because you're not being challenged by others, which increasingly disconnects how smart you think you are from how smart you actually are. Number 3. The experience desert. Social isolation dramatically reduces the exposure to novel experiences and diverse perspectives. Studies show that this directly impacts both your crystallized intelligence and reasoning abilities. Every social interaction you miss is essentially a learning opportunity your brain doesn't get, and over time, this creates a significantly narrower knowledge base that affects cognitive performance in measurable ways. Crystallized intelligence, your accumulated knowledge and skills, is one of the two main components of general intelligence, along with fluid intelligence. While fluid intelligence tends to peak in early adulthood, crystallized intelligence normally continues growing throughout life, but only if you continue being exposed to new information and experiences. Social situations force your brain to encounter different viewpoints and novel reasoning patterns constantly. These experiences create what researchers call reasoning templates, basically different mental frameworks your brain can use to solve future problems. A casual conversation might expose you to a new way of thinking about politics or information about topics you'd never explore on your own. Each of these exposures adds to your cognitive toolkit. Research has found that socially isolated people score measurably lower on tests of fluid reasoning within just months of reduced social contact. Your brain literally becomes less adaptable and dumb at handling unfamiliar problems. This brain narrowing effect accelerates over time and in the long run can contribute to cognitive decline and even dementia. Number 4. Less performance pressure. Scientists have found that peer pressure and social benchmarking naturally push people toward deliberate practice. When you eliminate social pressure, your brain stops accessing its higher performance modes, leading to a gradual degradation in cognitive abilities. Deliberate practice requires you to work at the edge of your current brain abilities, constantly pushing yourself slightly beyond your comfort zone. This kind of practice is cognitively demanding and often uncomfortable, which means you rarely engage in it voluntarily without external motivation. When you know that your performance might be compared to others, you work trying to meet social expectations, and your brain automatically engages in more effortful cognitive work. You pay closer attention, work harder to avoid mistakes, and push yourself to perform at higher levels than you would in isolation. Studies show that people who live without regular and intellectual challenges from peers have decline in brain processing speed and executive function within weeks. Simple tasks like remembering where you parked your car or following a short recipe become noticeably harder. Your brain's arousal systems start operating at suboptimal levels. You're not stressed enough to fully engage your cognitive resources, and you're also not getting the reward anticipation that comes from potential social recognition. This leaves you in a cognitive middle ground where you're neither fully relaxed nor fully engaged, a state that's particularly bad for mental performance. The concerning part, your brain starts accepting this lower standard as normal. You lose calibration for what peak cognitive performance actually feels like. Basically, you become dumber than you actually think you are. Number 5. Motivation flatline. Imagine your life without motivation to do anything. Your brain is secretly powered by competition, even when you think you're completely self-motivated. When those external motivators disappear, your cognitive effort measurably decreases across multiple domains of mental performance. Your brain evolves sophisticated reward systems that are fundamentally social in nature. When you accomplish something challenging while others are watching, your brain releases different combinations of neurotransmitters compared to when you achieve the same thing in isolation. Scientists call this the social facilitation effect, where you try harder when others are also trying hard, and something called audience effects, where your brain automatically upregulates performance when it detects social observation. Even if no explicit competition exists, your brain usually puts in more effort when it knows other people will care. Without these social rewards, your brain starts treating every mental challenge like a pointless exercise, where the score doesn't matter because no one will ever see it. This creates a downward spiral in cognitive motivation. You start finding it pointless cleaning your room because no one will visit, or even taking showers. What once felt like laziness becomes your default state, and over time your baseline for effort steadily erodes. The danger is that you no longer recognize the gap between what you can do and what you can't, leaving your cognitive potential underutilized and gradually diminished. Number 6. Weaker social accountability. Scientists have discovered that social accountability acts as a cognitive enhancer, and losing it measurably impacts working memory. When there's no one around to notice your mental performance, your brain literally operates at the lowest possible standard. Social accountability works through multiple psychological mechanisms that most people never consciously notice. There's the obvious motivation factor into where your brain modulates performance based on social context. Think of your pre-loneliness brain like a student who knows the teacher might call on them at any moment. Your attention stays sharp because your brain maintains a state of cognitive readiness. But when the teacher leaves the room and won't be coming back, suddenly maintaining peak performance feels not just optional, but wasteful. This affects your working memory. When you stay alone, even the simplest daily routines, like cooking a meal, keeping track of bills, can start to feel heavier. The absence of social reminders and shared responsibilities gradually makes everyday life feel harder to manage. This takes a toll on your brain, gradually wearing down your focus and reducing the sharpness you need for everyday problem solving. That is why most lonely people struggle with everyday mental tasks like remembering appointments, because their brains no longer have the subtle boosts that come from social accountability.